It's really hard to talk about the endings of the Persona games because, like, most people who've played it have, I don't know, gotten 70% of the way through. If you couldn't tell by the title, I think they kind of have trouble sticking the landing with these games. And I know how Persona fans are. Please don't kill me. Listen, hear me out. Just hear me out, okay? Hear me out. In this video, I'm going to talk about Persona 5 Royal, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 3 Reload, because they're all considered like final or complete versions of their respective stories, or at least like modernized. Bear with me here. I'm also going to talk about the ending of Persona 3 Portable and original Persona 5. So, spoiler warning for literally all of that, and I will not only be talking about the endings in detail, but I will be showing footage, so do not be surprised. Do not get mad at me. I will not be talking about Persona 1 and 2. I feel like they're kind of their own thing. They're very different from 3, 4, and 5, so we're gonna put them on the back burner indefinitely. I don't think I'm ever making a video about those games. Disclaimer for all my Persona fans out there, I have a lot of hours in these games. Nobody call me a fake fan. I'm in the trenches, okay? I'm not a hater from Haterville. I'm, like I said, one of the 4 people who have finished a Persona game. We're in the trenches together. I just have some thoughts about the trench that we're in. Other Persona fans are gonna look at my hours and be like, oh, 100 hours? Rookie numbers. So, subjective. I know there's people who've played these games like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9,000 times. Yeah, you got me beat there. You know what? Credit where credit's due. I have opinions and criticisms of these endings, but that does not mean I hate them, or I think that they're the worst to ever exist, or I hate these games. I played them, I finished the game, clearly I liked it enough to get 80 to 100 hours into it, obviously. I think we're landing the plane, we just like lost a wheel or two. So, quick overview of each ending. Persona 3 Reload, you find out Makoto, the protagonist, was like merged, half possessed long term by a shadow during the car accident that killed his parents like 10 years ago, which was during a huge explosion. The Shadow Research Center that created Tartarus and killed Yukari's dad, and then some guy in a scarf appears and tells you have to fight God, and then vanishes. He's just generally dressed sort of like a steampunk factory worker for some reason. Whatever, this is not the time.
It's been a long time since we talked.
Then you and the gang can choose to give up your memories of the coming apocalypse and go suddenly without fear, or keep your memories and fight God when the time comes. I guess there's like 2 climaxes, actually. It's kind of odd. Like, there's that whole bananas crucifixion scene with Akutsuki. Yeah, I don't know. That was kind of its own thing, though. Anyway, Persona 4 Golden, you find out Adachi is so much of a loser he turned to badly executed murdering to cope with his dissatisfaction with his lot in life. Also, everything past the first act turns out to be a red herring, and the actual crime occurs only in the first 10 hours, and everything after that is you dorking around, so I have some thoughts on that, personally. Persona 5 Royal, Akechi tweaks out and betrays you because his dad is an evil politician and then dies, but you're still bros. Mementos is doing like end of the world shit. Igor starts levitating, your therapist becomes God and wants to eliminate everything interesting about life. And then there's the Kasume Sumire stuff. So what are my overall problems with the Persona endings? What's my beef? What's my damage? Number 1 is that there's a lot of setup in these games that is like stronger than what it ends up amounting to. It's sort of like the same principle of like you never show a monster in a horror movie, where like the audience's imagination of the thing that's being implied or set up is always gonna be, or at least sometimes / most of the time, gonna be stronger than what a writer or a creator can actually do, just because there's nothing quite like your own imagination, right? I feel like the biggest victim here is Persona 4 Golden. All that setup and all that investigating, and it's low-key Adachi just kind of fucking around. Like, he discovered the power of TVs by complete accident, and the scene for that is like goofy as hell too.
What are you going to do? No!
She fell in.
You spend 70 hours investigating, kinda, and it's a disgruntled office worker who can't take no for an answer, shoving a weather woman into a TV and discovering magic as a result. Even worse, because now that I think about it, there's like a crazy love triangle, cheating scandal, and whatnot with the lady. There's like an affair or something. So that was set up to be part of like a larger scheme, conspiracy, method of targeting victims. and it turned out to be like an oopsie moment. This kind of happens in the original Persona 5 ending with Akechi. Like, the relationship is built up so much and then boom, he dies, whatever, diva down. Royal fixes this a bit by bringing him back in like Marmot or Maserati or whatever his name is in his like palace perfect reality fake world thing they have happening. What is his name? Marmot, more Measles, Dr. Measles. The fuck was his? Maruk. It's Maruki. Got it in one. Persona 3 is a little guilty of this as well. There are a few mysteries that are set up, like what really caused the explosion 10 years ago and what really happened to your parents, and like instead of uncovering the truth or just kind of like discovering it along the way, someone just kind of tells you sitting around the living room. Like, it would have been more fun to kind of discover that information, whether it was through Tartarus or other characters or whatever, like bits and pieces. Instead, you like sit down on the couch and someone just like explains it to you flat out, which I get sometimes like you just gotta do in a story. But personally, I would have liked it if we had a bit more payoff for those instead of just having it explained to our face. Issue number 2 is scale/power crawl. So original Persona 5 is the biggest victim here because it gets so abstract and over the top so fast that the stakes kind of get lost. It reminds me of Danganronpa V3's ending, but like less bad, if you know about that game. This is like a really personal thing. Well, I guess this whole video is, but like one personal thing for me is once the stakes start involving like the fabric of reality, I kind of clock out a little unless it's like really well explained. That's on me a little. I'm a believer in grounding your stakes. I remember the last 3 seasons of Voltron. Yikes. They do ground the stakes somewhat better in Royal through Akechi, but it's like inverse stakes grounding, if that makes sense, because it's more of an incentive not to fight than something to protect, but whatever, it functionally kind of works the same. Not that it matters, because it's like heavily implied he lives anyway. Persona 3 Reload to an extent, but a lesser extent, I would say. With the spirit possession via car accident, I know it was, I guess, but still. I feel like that wasn't very well explained to me anyway. I don't get it. Maybe that's my fault, honestly. But the whole like sealing a shadow within you, it's like, so was he just like chilling in there like Naruto style? Like that's just a secondary being within the protagonist? Or was he like, that's him, like he's him? And also, since when did Aegis have powers like that? Since when could Aegis do that at all? Why is Aegis able to do that? I don't know. Maybe that is explained. I haven't played the answer, so there might be something I'm missing there, but that's one thing where it's like, that didn't make sense to me. I just got really confused. I think other parts of the ending don't have this problem though. I think every other escalation in power was like built to and felt organic, even if it wasn't perfectly explained. Like, it worked enough that I wasn't complaining. But the car accident, spirit possession, sealing the shadow within a random 10-year-old thing was like, oh, not even a 10-year-old, 6-year-old? How old was that? Was like a kindergartner. Jesus Christ. Okay. Anyway, Persona 4 doesn't have this problem, I think, because they're just kind of fucking around. The Marie stuff is another story. Actually, I keep forgetting about that. Oh my god. Like, I genuinely keep forgetting stuff happens in that story after you catch Adachi. I guess maybe there is kind of power crawl with the Marie stuff, because then you're fighting God again. Maybe that's just a staple of the Persona series, but I don't like it that much, because all 3 of these games are very grounded in their settings and in their characters and in your relationships with these characters. And then in the 3rd act, we pivot and we're like, let's fight God. Like, in a different story, I probably wouldn't be complaining as much, but because the rest of Persona feels so centered around daily life and the place that you're in and the people that you're with and the bonds you have with them, the fact that we keep doing this like pivot to fighting God thing, I'm not a huge fan of that. Persona 3, however, I think it works because that's in story, it's like we build to that. It makes sense. In 4 and 5, I'm less of a fan. Issue number 3. Dude with brown hair and a fuck-ass beige coat is evil every time. I get that they're kind of running with this, but as funny as it is, it's gotten really predictable. I like the idea of having a character that betrays you in some major way, even if they aren't the main villain, but not if it's the same guy in a new brunette wig every time. Like, at this point, there's a developed visual language for a guy who betrays you in a Persona game. They all have similar demeanors, too. I wouldn't say similar personalities, though. Akechi and Akutsuki are kind of similar, but they all have, like, kind of a friendly, slightly hapless exterior wrapped in gray-brown neutrals. My original grayish kings. Persona games tend to reuse tropes, and that's not inherently bad. Like, it can be a good thing, but sometimes it is a bad thing. You know, like, I don't mind the two idiots of different flavors bit they do for, like, the initial trio. Although I guess Yukari's not an idiot, but her vibe is, like, more serious on. I like that. I think that's cute. But I'm not a fan of, like, the female party member who can't cook bit they always do. You know, like, Fuka is the Priestess Arcana, and she has an entire social link about being shit at cooking. Yukiko is the Priestess Arcana, and she has an entire social link about being shit at cooking. Yukari's shit at cooking, dog won't even eat her food. Chie is also bad, but it's a secondary B plot. I'm getting sidetracked. I don't think it's funny to be bad at cooking. Like, I'm over the bit. Anyway, that was a self-indulgent side tangent, but my evil grayish kings are what I need to focus on. I played Persona 3 last out of the games, and literally the first second of the first scene where Akutsuki existed on screen, I clocked him instantaneously. I was like, that guy's evil. Not because any of the things happening in the scene, not because of any of the content or what he said, but because he was grayish. I think at the time of Persona 3's release, it was likely not as established of a trope and may have been like a genuine plot twist, but by the time I got to it, the aforementioned visual language was made so strong by the following games that I was on to him despite the fact that he hadn't done anything to warrant it. So now I'm gonna look at the 3 endings one by one and give you the rundown. First up is Persona 3 Reload. Best ending out of the 3, changed my mind. Most well set up, the only game where the stakes feel consistent with the rest of the game. You know, you are fighting God, like I said, but we were building to that. The overall tone of the game is much darker, which I guess everybody knows at this point. You know, it focuses on shadows and Tartarus, and those things being the work of something unknown and powerful. Although, side note, the music contributes to some bizarre switch-ups in tone throughout the game, especially towards the end. November, in particular, I think the game would have benefited from making the lighting, atmosphere, and the music for the dorm darker sooner as the game progressed, because, like, someone will get shot and killed, and then the music in the dorm 90 seconds later is, like, downright peppy. This was a problem in other versions of Persona 3 too. It's usually just a music problem. Like in Portable, the cheerful music still kicks in way too soon after something dark, specifically Shinji's death. But the dorm lobby is much gloomier just from the beginning. It has much more subdued colors. That place is a fluorescent nightmare in Reload, and they made the couches neon fucking red for some reason. The carpet too is like offensive. I don't like the color palette in the Reload. Oh, it's all bright again. I don't like that. I hate this. The couches were not that fuck ass shade of red in Portable. They were like brown. I don't know why they did that. I think having the music change at least to something more chill, if not more somber, to match the increasingly darker tone of the story would go a long way. I don't know. I know this is like a self-indulgent side tangent again, but this has been weighing on me heavy, like I can't lie. If anything at all is like my biggest gripe with the final act of Persona 3, it's the inconsistency in tone, like November through January, because I think it undercuts the tension so bad. To be clear, they do like desaturate the colors and play more somber music starting in January in Reload, and the music's appropriate. This is great. This is phenomenal. This is what they should have done when Shinji died. But I think it should have started when Shinji died and then gotten even darker and even more depressed. My biggest gripe with Persona 3, which is a sentence I already said, what the fuck? I wanted it to be way darker, but I think I was set up because everyone said how dark it was, so my expectations may not have been set at the right place. I found the atmosphere of 4 to be more ominous at certain points, with all the green fog and the culprit being someone so close to you and stuff like that. I guess Akutsuki, well, I'm saying that like Akutsuki isn't Adachi in a different wig, but I think Persona 3 Portable and the original PS2 game kind of nail the visual atmosphere better. And I think Reload is a little too bright and saturated and clean. Overall, I thought it would be significantly darker than 4 or 5, and I think it certainly ends darker, and I like that. But the actual course of the game is not like that much darker than 4. Maybe darker than 5. 5 had like a lot of suicide actually though, so I don't know. But like I do think it's still darker than 4 and darker than 5. I expected fewer moments of levity, I guess, so I was surprised by that. I don't know, I'm getting sidetracked again for like the 4th time, but like that's not really a criticism of the ending, that's more like just my personal subjective experience with the game. So take that with a grain of salt, if you would. The game sometimes did feel like it was working really hard to stop itself every time it got too dark though. Like everyone gets strung up like Christ on the cross, and Akutsuki betrays them, and Mitsuru's dad dies, and they're like, who's ready for the school trip? At least Akihiko and Ken talk about Shinji after he dies. Mitsuru should too, but whatever. But Akutsuki like crashes the fuck out and goes scorched earth on your team, and we drop it like 2 days later. Nobody ever talks about it again. Understandable for like Mitsuru because she's more focused on her dad dying, but everybody else does not linger on what happened. No psychological repercussions for essentially being crucified. I think this is more of a Reload problem specifically. Portable had the music a little too peppy on occasion. But the visuals were more like rough, gritty, I guess. The art style compared to how clean and clear and crisp Reloads is, I think goes a really long way for the atmosphere of Portable. Plus, playing as the Femc makes the story more emotional, I'd say. Like, having social links with Shinji and Akihiko in particular adds a lot. And Koromaru, the best character. In the original, the male MC doesn't have social links with them at all, right? So in Reload, you have like those event things, but Akihiko's is just like, we are bros, let's eat dinner, and Shinji spends most of his time talking about Akihiko and Mitsuru and telling you to fuck off, and it's better than nothing. But the Femc social links felt way more like the player character actually developed a bond with them. Shinji's especially was one I enjoyed a lot, and it really contributed to the more like tragic tone, because he tries not to get close to you because he knows he's dying, but you end up getting close anyway, but he's still dying, so it's like doomed from the start. Also on that note, Koromaru wanting, I'm talking about Reload now again, but Koromaru wanting to go with you after you move out of the dorm did get me. That was kind of sad, so credit where it's due. So like, I'm just rambling now, but like also playing as the Femc made her, Yukari, and Junpei actually feel closer, like as friends. Like when you're the Femc, Yukari's like your homegirl now, and if I remember correctly, you can't romance Junpei like at all. Like you can try and he will say no. And they like, I feel like you get fun little moments there that like they have strong group chemistry, I guess. Basically, TLDR, I think the lighthearted parts of the game should have been scaled back, and a few jokes and songs and scenes should have been a little less goofy, and the lighting should have been gloomier, and even at the end when they desaturate the colors, I think the lighting is still too clear and bright compared to the way they did the lighting in the original, and Persona 4 to an extent as well. I just wanted it to be like visually darker, sonically darker, you know? I will say in regards to like the protagonist sacrifice, liked it. Same thing where it's like I would have liked if the colors and were dialed back a little bit, but I liked it. Like I did like that part. No notes really.
In the future, I'll face it head on. Not a single doubt remains in my mind. And the reason...
I promise.
Oh my god, why are you staying in the aisle?
Mitsuru.
That's right.
It's because I have forged such wonderful friendships. And we swore that we would never lose hope, no matter what the future may bring.
Senpai, we remembered him, and Aigis.
All at once?
I did as well. Let's go. They're waiting.
What?
Hello, this is a ceremony. We're not done.
Okay, that was kind of cornball. I think Persona 3 Reload has way better quality of life and gameplay mechanics, but when it comes to how the story plays out, I think I prefer Portable. Like, I know it's the same story, but the FMC social links and the slightly darker visuals kind of sold it for me way more. I know I'm like dogging on it. This is my favorite ending out of all of them. I do like it. So now it's Persona 4 Golden's turn, and I gotta say, least favorite from a critical storytelling perspective. Don't kill me. I know everybody loves Persona 4, but like, hear me out. Hear me out. This is my subjective opinion. Hear me out. Top dog from a sheer entertainment perspective. I was actually in stitches for half of it. Like, what can I say? But from a more serious perspective, it's my least favorite Persona game. I still like it. I really was not attached to the characters the way I was in the other games, I have to say. I only really like Kanji and Naoto. Loved Kanji, liked Naoto, to be clear. Would have loved Naoto if they didn't spend so much time just like info dumping while we are standing directly in front of a main antagonist. Like, please, let's get to it. But I couldn't stand most of the rest of the party, which I know is an unpopular take, but it's mine. I may be biased in the sense that I am more critical because I was less emotionally invested, so keep that in mind. I did not give a gaff about Marie or whoever she was. I like the murder mystery in theory. I am a very big murder mystery fan, but the actual story and writing wasn't my favorite. Like, specifically, only the first 2 murders were Adachi, and like, for a serial killer plot in an 80-hour game, there's technically only 2 victims, and one was sort of an accident, and all the rest were like Namatame doing his thing and trying to save them in the TV, or like Mitsuo doing that copycat shit, and like wild goose chase kind of thing. Personally, that's what I think. I wouldn't have minded if like the red herrings were dialed back a bit, if they were responsible for like 1 or 2, or like, I don't know, earlier in the game, because a lot of the Namatame stuff happens like right at the end, right near the Adachi stuff. So that made it like a smidge confusing for me, because I had to set my controller down and work out the logistics in my head for a sec. Because like, so many people were targeted, but in the end it was like 60% people who were not the main culprit dorking around, and that could be like a skill issue on my part, because it took me forever to get what they were trying to go for with like the Adachi did the first 2, and then we had the copycat, and then we had Namatame fucking around. And so it feels a little bit like a comedy of errors, even though I know it's not. The fact that it's like, him, no him, is like, okay. A red herring I can respect, I can appreciate, but it got a little too, like, only the first 10 hours of this game actually mattered, plot-wise, is how it felt a little bit. Sue me. Also, Adachi getting caught via slip of the tongue, I'm lukewarm on that. Like, not bad, you could definitely do worse, but I feel like we could up the drama on that. You know, I feel like, I don't know. That's a really vague criticism. Also, this is like kind of a weird personal criticism that doesn't matter, but I feel like fewer people should have been at the confrontation in the hospital. Like, the whole posse rolling up makes the scene a little visually cluttered, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really important that they're all there. It really only matters that you and Naoto are there, and like maybe Yosuke. Having like 7 people pull up is a little comical. Like, here comes the gang. Like, I get wanting to have all of the main cast to be present for the main confrontation, though. Like, I don't really have a solution for this. I just thought there was way too many people in that scene. Like, that was a small platoon entering stage left. The way they clock Adachi before the confrontation was kind of odd to me, too. Like, there's no actual evidence or reason to suspect him, but he had the opportunity and the means and wouldn't have been reported. But like, several other members of the police force would have the same opportunities, so like, what incriminated him specifically? Like, I get that it is like, the murderer is going to be a named character we know, and we only know 2 people on the force, and one of them's in the hospital with like several broken bones, so, you know, process of like elimination. But I think I would have liked it more if there was just a little more evidence or hints, or like, not even like cold hard evidence or proof, just like more instances or like little things that would make him seem kind of suspicious here and there. I think would have gone a long way, because once I was there standing out in the snow, I was like, I don't really get it, but whatever. I know I see the logic, but I wish there was something more incriminating, like, you know, something innocuous in the middle of the game that you wouldn't have thought about, that like one of the characters mentions in passing and then you can go like, wait a minute, or whatever. Like, it doesn't even have to be that like complicated, because like once you get to the confrontation, Naoto clocks him for phrasing on a couple things while you confront him, but doesn't bring it up while discussing at the restaurant, so you don't really get to deduce that he said something odd. It would have been better, I feel like, if we'd brought it up sooner. Yukiko doesn't bring up that Adachi was even at the inn until you already decide to suspect him too, so you can't really use that. The one thing is that Mitsuo ends up in the TV world while being investigated by the police, despite the fact that we established that he didn't use TV powers to do the murder, hence the bludgeoning. But that doesn't really get brought up by the characters until they're actually in the TV world arguing with Adachi, I don't think. So, also, in that scene, it's you, Naoto, and Yosuke doing all the work again. Like, everybody else is low-key tagging along. Like, when they're outside the restaurant and, like, doing all the deduction, they're doing all the work again. Like, we don't need all 7 to do this. And anyway. Also, Adachi's motivation was, like, okay, I guess. He was serving, like, hardcore incel. Like, he killed both Yamano and Saki because they low-key rejected him and his advances. And no one ever talks about the, like, rapist thing he has going on. Or maybe they do and I'm not running in the right circles, but like I feel like crazy because I never see anyone talk about the fact that he's specifically killing women who reject his physical advances. Like that does not seem to be lingered on. And like I don't know, maybe people do talk about it and I'm missing it. I shouldn't assume, but that was the original ending. But like the Marie stuff is kind of in the same boat with the original Persona 5 ending, kinda, like vibes-wise, not one-to-one. It doesn't even feel like a real ending to the game. It feels like DLC or something. You feel me? Like, I would have been perfectly satisfied with, like, you beat Adachi, set things right. The IRL world and the TV world aren't merging anymore. And the fog leaves checks out to me. Having all that stuff with Marie where she's, like, absorbing the fog or whatever and secretly 3 people fused into one and also God and so on and so forth. I was fine with what we had before. The Marie stuff, like, I could have gone without it, personally. Like, I like a lot of the things added in Golden. I don't like the additional dungeon and fighting God thing they start doing. In this case, we were not building to it. Okay, now we're on to Persona 5. OG Persona 5 ending is my least favorite from a personal perspective, hands down. I'm not a fan of super, like, meta world breaking out the ass stuff, but, like, to each their own. I have less criticism for it from like a writing perspective than I do Golden. Like the setup is kind of there. I like Royal's ending much better. I like the fake reality Maruki stuff purely as a way to give Akechi more spotlight in post-betrayal development even, but the main reason, getting to see Akechi more being himself, crazy, and not how he pretends to be, a prick, love that. I also liked the party being different from Maruki's Palace, that you get Kasumi/Sumire and Akechi in your party. Fire. Love it. By far, the part I cared most about was the characters, and it has a similar problem to Golden in the sense that the final act or the final antagonist feels pretty abrupt and kind of like a pivot and like very tacked on rather than an organic advancement of the story. I don't think it's as bad as the Marie stuff in Golden. I think that was way more out of left field. This, obviously, you had Kasumi and Maruki throughout the game being relatively kind of important, sort of. More like present. They weren't really doing anything until the end, but like, whatever. I am, however, a big fan of getting more Akechi, and I don't know of any way to do it with the way that original Persona 5 ended. Akechi navigation lines are worth whatever it takes to have them.
Powerful enemies, but not powerful enough to withstand nuclear attacks.
The Kasumi Sumire stuff was fine. I liked it alright. The way Kasumi dies in the flashback is kind of weird though. Like, from what I can tell from it, it's like Sumire wasn't paying attention and deadass just like walked into traffic, and Kasumi like pushes her out of the way of the truck, I think, and like gets hit or hits her head and dies. And it's like, oops, I wasn't looking where I was going. And like, that's it, that's the catalyst. This is kind of like a reoccurring problem in Persona games where like key plot points or events are like complete accidents. Definitely how it works in real life for sure, but from a storytelling perspective, I find it kind of unsatisfying. I suspect a lot of this like making things accidental, like Adachi's first murder and Sumire strolling in traffic, is a symptom of trying to keep the tone lighter. It's much darker if there's intention behind those events, but it's also better writing. Also, with Sumire thinking she's Kasumi, what are the logistics on that? Like, why did no one notice and correct her? Like, did her dad not clock that or think it was weird? Did Maruki tell him not to? Because, like, Maruki fucked with her cognition, that's why she thinks that. But she, like, introduces herself as Kasumi, like, she says it out loud. So did no one clock, like, obviously she's at new school, nobody knows, but, like, didn't her family clock that? Like, we know she has a dad, canon. Like, so did Maruki fuck with his cognition too, or did he tell him not to do anything? But if so, what kind of parent would listen to that advice? And, like, so she was still Sumire the whole time to everybody else, but she was calling herself Kasumi, and everyone else was calling her Kasumi. So, like, how did nobody who knew for a fact she was Sumire, like, notice that and, like, sit her down and be like, hey, queen, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I don't understand the logistics of how that, like, never happened. Maybe I don't know. I get that it's, like, she was Sumire to everyone else the whole time, but it's like, was she? Everyone was calling her Kasumi, I thought. Or maybe they only called her last name? I don't know. I'm unclear on that. I'm so confused by that part. That's just me being, like, mad confused about how that worked out. This isn't even, like, a story criticism. I just, like, don't get it. I'm really confused about that. So if you know what happened, let me know. Overall, I feel like it was a tad unrelated to the wider story prior to Maruki's Palace. Like, I know they tried to tie it in, but it has the same issue with Golden, that, like, I feel like it's just a product of Royal's nature. Kasume and Kasume, that's her name now, Kasume and Sumire and Maruki felt like they were added on later in a way that is oddly separate from the core of the game's, like, story and identity. But that's because they were. Like, not much to be done about that, I fear. Like, that's actually just what happened. So I would have liked if they had a little more to do earlier in the story before the final act, but I also get that they couldn't fuck with the base game too much, you know? So, like, it could have been better, but I respect why it isn't, if that makes sense. I do really like Royal's ending. I don't like Persona 5's ending. I really like Royal's ending, though. When it comes to the original Persona 5 ending, I was just not rocking with it conceptually. Like I mentioned, like, Power Crawl, my sense of scale and stakes was sort of obliterated, because, like I said, I get kind of, like, not invested once it gets really abstract with, like, the god of desire and the fabric of reality, and, you know, that's some people's bread and butter, it's not mine. So I kind of like having a more personally grounded ending like Royals. I'm also a little bit over the trope of, like, guy who wants to eliminate all suffering and somehow does not realize that will destroy all of society at this point. Like, might just be me, because I don't find the goal noble whatsoever. Like, not even, like, you're wrong, but I sympathize. Like, not even in a case of, like, good intentions, bad methods. Like, I really think trying to eliminate all remotely negative emotions and experiences is evil, more than a little, and demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes someone human, which I guess was kind of the point. But I get the sense that Maruki was supposed to be more sympathetic than I felt he was. Oh, and his girlfriend left him. That was kind of funny. I forgot about that. Fabric of reality stuff I mentioned before. And the, like, I'm going to get rid of every negative emotion. Like, those are two things where I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. What even ever? Fuck off. Like, these aren't real structural critiques of quality. I was just sort of uninvested in Maruki's cause and, like, didn't have an ounce of sympathy for him. Like, I kind of didn't like his vibe day one either. Didn't like his outfit. He was looking a little too grayish. Wait a minute. Despite the fact I didn't give a fuck about Maruki, I still strongly prefer Royal's ending to the original. The Mementos and Igor stuff is even less grounded than, like, any kind of, I'm taking away all of your reality. Because at least Maruki's reality felt grounded in the people and the relationships and the difference between their, like, quote-unquote ideal world and the one that they have to exist in, whatever. The Velvet Room, Mementos, societal collapse, whatever, God of Desire, yada yada, like, the Maruki ending feels more grounded to me. This was just me talking about the endings to Persona games because no one I know in real life has played these games, and I say hardly anyone ever talks about it. That's not fucking true. Nobody ever shuts up about Persona, actually. I shouldn't lie on the internet. That's not ethical. Anyway, this is, like, I know I'm probably gonna title this something like the problem with Persona endings or whatever, but low-key this is just my disjointed thoughts and opinions and criticisms on the endings disguised as a coherent YouTube video. So, you're welcome. I just had some opinions and nowhere else to put them, like I always do. So, I would like to reiterate that I do like Persona, and I do like these games, and a lot of my criticism is probably subjective, so you do not have to polish the pitchfork. Like, I promise. Like I said, we're in this trench together. We're war buddies, really, when you think about it. He says there's no need to hesitate. Do you see I'm not human? There's no need to hesitate over killing me. Which he fails to consider that he is, I fear, objectively sexier in this form. Oh my god. What is this? We might pass each. Wait till. Morgana hasn't come back yet. I wonder where Morgana went.
There's nothing wrong with that. I can see why it would be a problem if it was between a teacher and a student, but...
Huh?
That doesn't give them the right to make fun of it like this.
No, I think it does. I think we could go a little harder on that, actually.
I'm going to write a letter of protest to the school paper.
Oh my god. There's a million things that are way more worth your time than that shit.
Oh, I'll be alright on my own. I'm going to do this by myself.
Well, yeah, whoopee. Okay.
Thank
Various science-related things. For sure, man, yeah. Maybe someplace like a medieval alchemy lab. You know, good old medieval alchemy lab that we definitely have in town.
I'm not used to seeing the girls dressed like that. Not sure why, but I get a little flustered looking at them.
So you are straight. Interesting.
It's beautiful nonetheless. It's perfectly conformed to the golden ratio.
No, it isn't.
Hey guys, can we go in already?
What? What's up, King? Can I not pet the cat? Worst game ever. Wait, why is he like hovering an inch off the ground? I'll take what he's having.